I did a thing. A couple weeks ago, a couple videos ago, you might have seen where I did a full gaming PC out of an Optiplex, full blown for 200 bucks. That included the video card, the memory, the computer itself, and monitor, keyboard, all that stuff. Come in right, I mean, just a shade over $200. Well, I kind of thought, what if I wanted more in there? What if I wanted DDR4 instead of DDR3? What if I wanted a better video card? What if I wanted more power? I kind of did a thing. So the first thing I did is the same as I did last time. I went ahead and went on eBay and I started looking for systems that were not working that would take one of the 6th gen or 7th gen processors, trying to get maybe an i5 or an i7 that wasn't working, that I could go ahead and then get to work with parts I either already had on hand or could get easily. I did find one for about $40. It came well packaged. It was a little bit dusty and dirty inside, but that the promise was as is, and that at one point it had been working. That was fine with me. That worked out pretty well because I already knew that I had the video card. I already knew I had some DDR4 memory, and I already knew I had the processor that was in the previous computer. I was able to go ahead and take that out, but man, this was a little bit of a struggle trying to get it to work. At first, the PCIe slot didn't want to try to work, and then I had to swap, put video card in the other slot, and it still wouldn't. I couldn't get anything to post, and I had to go back and forth. Finally, after I did things like clearing the BIOS and swapping memory and try to see if there was a memory channel that was messed up. And then somehow, some way, after playing around with all this, I finally got a screen that told me that I had changed the memory, and I had to go back into the setup screen. Oh, finally. So that worked. Now, what did not work was still the primary PCIe slot for some reason. But I was able to get everything going on. I was able to get in, bring everything up. I went ahead and ordered an NVMe drive for this one instead of using just a regular SSD. And so we were able to get Windows installed. And then playing around with the PCI slots again, somehow, some way, the primary slot began to work again. So we have a fully functioning computer that has right now 16 gig of memory. Even though it's DDR4 rated at, I believe, 3000 or 3200, it's only saying it is 2133 if I remember correctly. That's because the voltage regulates the speed of that memory. Now on the older, say, Optiplexes and the HP, all the Pavilions and all that, all those pre-built, the overclocking of the memory is not adjustable in the BIOS. So you're kind of stuck, and you have to use JEDEC type memory, which is that speed is regulated. That the speed of those memory modules is to that voltage. So if it's 1.35 or 1.5 volts or whatever, and it's rated for that speed, that's what speed it'll run. Most of the memory you buy now is overclockable. If you just put it in your computer and you let it go, it's going to go to a base speed and you have to adjust it in your BIOS. Well, this doesn't give you that option to do. You have to actually buy the memory that's going to be rated at that speed, at that voltage. It shouldn't be a big deal. It might cost me a few dollars more. It might not. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll order on eBay and try to save $1 or $2. But used memory sometimes, or used hard drives, or storage, I don't know if I like buying stuff like that on eBay. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it, okay? The CPU, we can use the 6500 from the other rig. We'll go ahead and upgrade eventually to a 6700 or 7700. The pricing on that, the 6500, runs, to me, to get just another one, maybe about 25 or 30 bucks. So the price of that is not too bad. But if I try to go to a i7, it's going to cost me between $65 and say $85, depending on 6th gen or 7th gen. Even though 8th and 9th will fit in that same socket, they will not work with the chipset that's on that motherboard. So those are out. We are stuck to 6th or 7th, which is fine. We should get a pretty good performance out of that. And at one time, that 7700, that was a Boss CPU. Now keep in mind, the same time that the 6th gen and 7th gen of Intel were coming out, around 2015 to 2017, AMD had, they had designs of their own. And in 2017, they introduced the new Zen platform with all the Ryzen processors. pretty much a game changer at that point. We were getting 4-core 4-thread or 4-core 8-thread off of the Intel products, and here AMD came along and they had a true 6-core 12-thread, or in some cases they would have an 8-core 16-thread in the case of the 1700 and the 1800 and all that. In fact, I've got a 1700X, and I've got the 1600 that we're going to try in another system, because if we can get a baseline off of this, we can also compare it to that 1600 to see apples to apples what would have been out about that time frame and how we can compare those two. Now it's going to be a little bit skewed because right now we're having to use that single slot RX 6400, which is a new GPU. Now I could totally rearrange those tests and test the Ryzen 1600 with that 6400, but I would rather go ahead and get both of these to a point where I can put a more powerful graphics card in this Optiplex and test it against, say, that video card against both the 1600 and either the 6th gen or 7th gen, whichever I decide to put in here. Now, I would rather test it against the i7 just to see if it'll hold up, but it might not be a good test anyway. We'll have to see. We'll see when we get there. But what we wanted to do in this case is we wanted to use pretty much the same parts in the $200 build in this one to see how they compare in a baseline. Is the DDR4 going to be actually a little bit better than the DDR3 would be with the same other parts? And what we kind of found out was, yeah, a little bit, about what you expect. Now, typically the difference when you're going to a new generation, you're not going to see that much of an uplift with the finely tuned previous generation to the brand new generation. So, and the reason why I say that is because once you get to a point, say you went from DDR3 and the high speed of the DDR3, you were running at 1600. Well, then you went to maybe 2133 of the DDR4 memory. It didn't make that much of a difference in performance, the finely tuned old generation to the brand new one. They kind of leveled out and they weren't that big of a difference. Then over time, that new generation gets better until, again, it's replaced by a new generation after it's been finely tuned. That's why a lot of these motherboards for Intel that have DDR4 and DDR5, to start out with, you'll see similar performance. In any case, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at these. We got Shadow of the Tomb Raider, we got Borderlands 3, we got Cyberpunk 2077, Forza Horizon 5, and we'll take a look at CS2, which is the upgrade from CSGO. And as we go through these a little bit, you'll see that Shadow of the Tomb Raider, and again in Borderlands 3, they both have just a slight difference or a slight advantage for the DDR4 for the most part. And then when we get to Cyberpunk, it's a little bit of a hiccup. They're exactly the same. They were slightly different at lower resolutions, but I didn't track that on here. That was when I was testing 900 and 700, and I don't know why quite that is, but I did see a little bit of difference sometimes when I was testing. But but right back to normal when we're looking at Forza Horizon 5. We're looking at a slight better performance for the DDR4. And then CS2 was a surprise because not only has the game been upgraded, where it's operating on DX11 now instead of DX9, the old API for video graphics, but there's a 20% increase here. There's a 20% uplift in the performance from the DDR3 to DDR4. So I'm kind of curious to see how that's going to go with DDR4, this DDR4 running at 2133 megatransfers, if we can get better memory that's going to allow that to go, say, 3200 speed. I don't know if it will or not. Intel is not susceptible. It doesn't care as much about the memory speed as AMD products do. But yeah, I'll be kind of curious to see if there is a difference there and what difference that can make. So this initial baseline, this getting the level playing field, or this getting the initial numbers here, we're not too much into this. Say the 6500 processor, $30. DDR4 memory, just base memory, we can get for $30 or $35. So we're talking about $70 for the case. We're talking about another $60, $65, $100 there. For the video card, again, we're overspending for that video card because it is an RX 6400. They're overpriced for the value. But again, we had the same problem with the $200 build. So this one's going to come in, I don't have it tracked on the screen, but this is going to come in around the 220, maybe a little bit more, 220 mark. So it's coming in just slightly more expensive than the other build that we did. But we have more of an upgrade path in this one. So we'll have to see. again, we're looking at better or faster DDR4 memory. We're looking at a different video card, which means we're probably going to have to upgrade the power supply and have to find a creative way to do that. We'll have to do a better processor. So we're going to be spending between $65 and $85 on that. And then we're looking at the storage should be fine, but the video card, we should be able to put a video card that has, say, 8 gig of VRAM in there. But I want to keep it the same time period. So it's probably going to be like one of the RX 580s or an RX 480 or something. That should be pretty fair. So we'll figure out that. We'll get those numbers. We'll see what the price was. We'll compare that to this baseline. And then once we get it upgraded a little bit, we'll compare it to maybe that Ryzen 1600 that was out about the same time. That wasn't going to have to take as much trying to finagle. And then we'll look at that and see if it's cheaper to try to do something like that if you can get those secondhand parts, or just buy brand new, lower end, say a 12100 and a setup that way, and see if you can't start out sort of budget on a newer platform and have room to go up even further than we would be if we just try to make a gaming PC out of this. So, a lot to explore. I know there's a lot of weird stuff going on in this, but basically, when we're trying to move from this DDR3 to DDR4, we are going to get a slight uplift, but we have room to move up, we have room to expand, and we have room to improve this build, and so that's going to be the project going forward. There will probably be at least one more video on this when I get everything done, and I'll kind of go ahead and kind of recap it. This one, this computer itself came just the way they said it was going to. It came boxed very well. It was a little bit dusty inside, but that was, the promise was that it worked at one time. It didn't have anything in it, CPU, memory, or storage in it. I would have to provide that myself. So I knew that going in. Got exactly what I asked for. $40 is a pretty good price for that. And I might be able to do something with that case more than just house an Optiplex. We'll have to explore that later, because I've kind of did that with my server, and I think I can do that with something else. So we might have to see. Yeah, that's further down the road, though. But anyway, if you got anything out of this video, go ahead and throw a like on it for me if you don't mind. Big thanks to everybody that helped me get to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I haven't had a chance to brag about that or thank everybody yet, but my sincerest thanks, and let's keep it going. It's an awesome feeling to wake up in the morning and you see that you've broken that, or in this case, it was about 9:30 in the evening a couple weeks ago that I saw that, and it made me feel really good and really appreciative and kind of humbled that 1,000 people would click on a button that says they're willing to listen to what I have to say. So thank you. If you don't do anything else like visit my other socials or anything like that, do me one favor, and that's be good to each other. Okay, be kind. It costs nothing at all to be kind. Just smile, wave, say good morning, hold the door open. Something, anything. It doesn't cost you anything to do that, except for maybe a small amount of effort and a little bit of time, but you really, really could change somebody's day. So, yeah, I got the Ryzen 1600 I'm working on in the background over there. I've got a brand new Elgato Stream Deck that I bought that will probably, I'm not going to do a video on how to set it up or this, that, or whatever. I'm just going to kind of do my feelings on this video that will be coming up because I really like it. So, yeah, I got a couple things coming up, but yeah, until I get myself into something I got no business getting into, that's all I got. So, I'll see you later.